The fall of the Assad regime in Syria marks a significant shift in the Middle Eastern geopolitical landscape. In a swift and calculated offensive, Syrian rebels, led by Hay'at Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, and its commander Ahmad al-Shar, also known as Abdul Muhamed Alalani, dismantled Assad's 5-decade-long rule in just 12 days. At the center of this operation was Turkey, whose strategic maneuvering and long-term investment in Syrian opposition forces played a pivotal role in reshaping the future of Syria. This video explores Turkey's involvement in the Syrian conflict, examining its historical context, military interventions, alliances with rebel factions, and the broader geopolitical ramifications of Assad's downfall. The Syrian Civil War, which began in 2011, has been one of the most complex and devastating conflicts of the 21st century. What started as a peaceful protest against President Bashar al-Assad's government quickly spiraled into a multifaceted war involving numerous domestic factions and international powers. Among the external actors, Turkey has played a critical role in shaping the conflict's trajectory. Through its support for opposition forces and military interventions, Ankara has emerged as a decisive player in Syria's political future. The recent collapse of the Assad regime, driven by rebel offensives from the HTS and Syrian National Army, SNA, underscores Turkey's strategic acumen and willingness to assert influence in the region. This video aims to provide an in-depth analysis of Turkey's role in the Syrian conflict, tracing the roots of its involvement, the key military operations it conducted, and the far-reaching implications for regional power dynamics. Turkey's engagement in Syria is part of a broader foreign policy shift under President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Since coming to power, Erdogan has sought to position Turkey as a leading power in the Middle East, moving away from the traditional zero problems with neighbors doctrine towards a more assertive and interventionist approach. This shift became evident during the Arab Spring, 2010 to 2011, when Erdogan embarked on diplomatic tours across the Middle East, promoting Turkey as a model for Islamic democracy. Erdogan's Arab Spring tour coincided with political uprisings in countries such as Libya, Egypt, Yemen, and Syria. For Turkey, these events represented an opportunity to expand its influence by supporting opposition forces and fostering alliances with emerging democratic movements. Syria became a focal point of Turkish foreign policy due to its proximity and historical ties. In the early stages of the Syrian uprising, Turkey attempted to mediate between Assad and opposition groups. However, as Assad's crackdown on protesters intensified, Ankara shifted its stance, becoming one of the first nations to openly support the Syrian opposition. By 2012, Turkey had severed diplomatic ties with Assad and began hosting Syrian army defectors, facilitating the formation of the Free Syrian Army, FSA. This marked the beginning of Turkey's active involvement in the conflict, driven by both ideological alignment with Sunni opposition forces and strategic concerns over Kurdish autonomy in northern Syria. The Syrian Civil War has been characterized by a fragmented landscape of competing factions. Key players include the Assad regime, supported by Russia, Iran, and Hezbollah. Assad's forces have relied heavily on foreign military assistance to maintain control. Free Syrian Army, FSA, a moderate opposition group initially backed by Turkey, the US, and Gulf nations. Hay'at Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, an Islamist coalition with roots in al-Qaeda. HTS has emerged as the dominant force in Idlib province. Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF, led by Kurdish factions, primarily the YPG, the SDF has received support from the US in its fight against ISIS and al-Qaeda affiliates. Although weakened, radical jihadist groups have played a disruptive role in the conflict. This multitude of actors has transformed Syria into a battleground for regional and global powers, with Turkey, Russia, Iran, and the United States vying for influence. Syria's diverse population further complicates the conflict. The ruling Assad family belongs to the Alawite sect, an offshoot of Shias, while the majority of Syrians are Sunni. In northern Syria, Kurdish populations have sought greater autonomy, often clashing with both the Syrian government and Turkish-backed forces. Turkey's primary concern has been the rise of Kurdish influence near its southern border, Ankara views the Kurdish YPG as an extension of the PKK, Kurdistan Workers' Party, which has waged a decades-long insurgency against Turkey. This perceived threat has driven Turkey to conduct multiple military operations aimed at curbing Kurdish expansion. In 2016, Turkey launched Operation Euphrates Shield, its first major military incursion into Syria. The primary objectives were to dislodge ISIS from the Turkish border region, prevent the formation of a contiguous Kurdish-controlled territory. The operation resulted in the capture of key towns, including Jarabulus and Al-Bab, establishing a Turkish-controlled buffer zone. Operation Olive Branch targeted the Kurdish enclave of Afrin, further consolidating Turkish influence in northern Syria. The offensive resulted in the expulsion of YPG forces and the establishment of Turkish-backed governance structures. Launched in response to U.S. plans to withdraw troops from northern Syria, Operation Peace Spring aimed to create a 30-kilometer safe zone along the Turkish-Syrian border. The operation displaced Kurdish forces, triggering international condemnation but achieving Ankara's strategic goals. Following Assad's offensive into Idlib, Turkey initiated Operation Spring Shield, directly engaging Syrian government forces. The operation marked a turning point as Turkey successfully halted Assad's advance, preserving the last major rebel stronghold in Idlib. In November 2024, HTS and the Turkish-backed SNA launched a coordinated offensive from Idlib, rapidly advancing towards major cities, including Aleppo, Hama, and Damascus. The offensive overwhelmed Assad's forces, culminating in the regime's collapse within 12 days. Assad fled to Moscow, effectively ending his rule. Turkey's logistical support, intelligence sharing, and military coordination were instrumental in the rebels' success. Erdogan's calculated risk paid off, positioning Turkey as the primary power broker in post-Assad Syria. Iran. Tehran's influence in Syria has diminished, undermining its axis of resistance. Russia. Moscow faces setbacks as its military assets in Syria come under threat. United States, Washington may reassess its support for Kurdish factions under pressure from Ankara. Turkey. Erdogan emerges as the chief architect of Syria's future, solidifying Turkey's regional dominance. The collapse of the Assad regime represents a turning point in Middle Eastern geopolitics. Turkey's strategic foresight, military interventions, and alliances with Syrian rebel forces have reshaped the region, elevating Ankara to a position of unparalleled influence. As Syria embarks on a new chapter, Turkey's role will be instrumental in shaping the country's reconstruction and political future. If you found this video insightful and want to stay updated on the latest geopolitical developments, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. Your engagement helps us continue to produce in-depth analyses and high-quality content. Let us know your thoughts and share this video with others who may find it valuable.